and welcome back to Making Better Bites. It's your host, Adrienne, here with you. I'm so excited for another episode, as always. So welcome if you are new, and welcome back for those of you who have tuned in to listen to any of my episodes before. Today, I want to talk to you all about inflammation, because inflammation is extremely important when it comes to women's health, women's menstrual cycles, your hormone cycles, and your general health as well. And I think that women suffer from a lot of inflammation, unnecessarily so, because of a lot of things going on in our lives. And so I just want to talk to you about some things that might be causing inflammation that you don't recognize or you don't know yet, or just things that you can do to help improve or reduce inflammation as well. So we are going to be covering lifestyle today. We're going to be talking about inflammatory dietary things that you could be consuming, or a way to follow a more anti-inflammatory diet, which instead of just being like neutral, it actually has properties to help reduce inflammation in your body overall. So that's kind of what we're going to cover today. I was inspired by a research article that I was looking at. If you get my newsletter on the weekends, this past week, I talked about inflammation there as well. And it was because I read this article and I really just want to share it with as many people as I can. It was kind of a review on inflammation from a lot of different perspectives, and took in a lot of studies and different people, like thousands and thousands of people that they were looking at, which I thought was really cool. I had a lot of really good data and information that it shared. And so I wanted to talk about it as a dietitian from that perspective and the importance of nutrition and having a healthy lifestyle. And then also, of course, I will be clipping this or sharing the link for this in the description of whether you're watching the video or the podcast, so that you can go and read it if you want to read the whole article, and to give them credit because it was a really great article. So before we get into that, I kind of want to address something that I saw on social media this morning first, because it was about ovulation and doctors, and it was from the perspective of one NAPRO surgeon that I follow. So NAPRO is NAPRO, is just a style of women's OBGYN, fertility, healthcare, overall health approach, and it stands for Natural Procreative Technology. And so she's a surgeon and OBGYN who, I think she works a lot with people who have endometriosis, which is why I was following her, just because I have endometriosis. So it was just interesting. And in this video, she said, that doctors are taught about ovulation in school from a negative perspective, that ovulation can increase your chances for having, ovarian cancer. So they were saying that they look at it from a negative perspective because it increases your risk of getting ovarian cancer, and how instead, of course, people choose to just shut off the ovulatory cycle with different medications. And that she was saying how that's extremely negative, and she thinks that it's approaches women's health, and it's from a way that's preventing advances, because we're looking at something that is natural and good and is happening already inside of our bodies and should be happening, as something that's unhealthy and negative instead. So I thought that was really interesting, especially coming off of my last episode that was about the importance of ovulation and why we need to experience ovulation and the health benefits of ovulating. I just wonder, is that really taught, first of all, because I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm a dietitian. I only know what I learned in school and what I read about. Second, is it still taught? Is it something that's still common? And third, why is it what is the risk of ovarian cancer if you experience ovulation, and what is the alternative? Is it hormonal birth control? Are they looking at the alternative of having your ovaries removed? Where is this coming from? So I don't know. We'll look more into it. But yeah, that's just what she had said. And I found it really interesting because ovulation is very important and healthy and normal. And it's good to have healthy ovulation cycles. So I just thought it was interesting considering the timing of what I've been talking about on the podcast. And then also just the fact that, like, if that's really true, that makes sense why so many people are recommended like hormonal birth control and things to stop their ovulation, and to like in order to fix a problem that they're experiencing, because it's looked at as something like negative to begin with. So I don't really know, but it's something to think about, which I thought was really interesting. And if you are a doctor, or if you know a doctor, like, is this true? Like, feel free to reach out and send me a message, because I'm very curious about that information. Um, so yeah, that's just something that I saw this morning on Instagram and I wanted to share. So, oh yes, disclaimer as well, I forgot to give this before I get started, is that this is not meant to diagnose, to be any kind of medical advice, or anything aside from general information. Please always check with your trusted healthcare providers before making any changes in your life for your health, medically, all of the things. They know your personal health history. I do not, and I cannot diagnose or any of the above anyways, so there's my health disclaimer. Okay, and with that done, we will talk about, first, I wanted to go over like the causes of inflammation, and then the consequences of that inflammation and things that cause it, because I thought that was really helpful, and it kind of puts into perspective how much inflammation plays a role in our lives and how much it could potentially be affecting us. So yeah, again, this was from the article. This is like directly, I'm pulling this information from it. So they had kind of like a side by side of causes. Well, it was really like a Venn diagram of like a wheel of two cogs that were kind of playing into each other. And then in the middle was systemic inflammation and how these things kind of dance around and create it. But the first cause, or the list of causes, of inflammation, things that cause inflammation: chronic infection, disrupted sleep, chronic stress, diet, poor gut health, obesity, and physical inactivity. Next is the consequences of that inflammation can be metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer, depression, autoimmune disease, neurodegenerative diseases, osteoporosis, and immune dysfunction. So those are the things that they have found that correlate with having inflammation regularly in your system. So, like I said, we are going to talk about three different facets of life and health and how those are associated with inflammation in the system. And the first thing we're going to talk about is lifestyle. So first up, lifestyle. And what they were kind of covering is like your social, how it plays into inflammation was like your social life, your activity levels, and your circadian rhythm. So the social life was kind of playing off of like how our system has changed a lot and how we function as a society, and how much things have changed with like the industrialization, and how our communication styles have changed, because it's really important for your life and your health to have a support system in your life. Oftentimes in the past, I feel like it's always been like your family, but just your community in general that you are surrounding yourself by, whether it is your family or your neighbors or your friends, whoever is in your life, and then larger communities spanning out from that. In my opinion, experience, whatever, I think we've lost a lot of that from, as well as like reducing the amount of walkable cities and things that are available to us directly in our communities and neighborhoods, because you have to get into a car to go a lot of places. And when you're in a car, you're not like socializing or passing by other people or stopping to say hello, all of those kind of things. You kind of like lose that because you're like driving from point A to point B. And then, whereas before, and that includes even just taking your kids to a playground, right? Like, it's not even necessarily assumed, given a common thing to experience, that you're going to have a playground directly in your neighborhood. So you might be driving to a playground and you're not interacting with people. And then, of course, we have our phones that are limiting our socialization with others around us as well, because it's easy to use your phone as a distraction or a time filler to take up time. And then if you're always having to drive or travel long distances to have this like experience, you are less likely to be interacting with people who are in your direct community, which also affects like your social abilities or maybe your connection with them, because it's just harder to get together. If you think about like when you're a kid, or I don't know, at any time when someone is your direct neighbor and they're someone that you're friends with, how much easier and simpler it is to make time to spend together or to go do something when they're literally right there and they don't have to like leave their house to meet you and all of those kind of things. So when people are in your direct community, that increases your socialization a lot. And then obviously our communities expand from there. It's like who lives in your home, the people you surround yourself with daily, weekly, going out bigger groups, whether it's like a church community or any kind of like a co-op or something that you belong to, and then bigger from there. So I think we've lost a big sense of community in on the multi-level way, and it's leaving people to feel extremely lonely and isolated because they don't have the reasons to run into people or to become friends with them as easily as we used to. That reminds me of something. So a few weeks ago, I was out for a walk on this trail in my town, and even that I have to drive to the trail and park and then just to walk on this like path that they've set up for walking. But anyways, kind of plays into that. But anyways, I was walking and I was being all like grumpy about the fact that like, oh, I guess people just like don't say hi anymore because nobody was saying hi when I walked past them. Nobody was greeting each other, and I was being kind of bitter about it because, I like to blame, you could just blame everything on like what happened in 2020, 2019, and how things had changed. Like, I guess people just don't talk anymore or make eye contact or whatever. And then, so I was being kind of grouchy about it. And then the next time that I went back a few days later to this same walking path, it's like, wow, I was having such a bitter, like negative attitude towards this situation previously, but like, I'm not a child. Like, I can be the one to say hi to someone else. It's not as if I was trying to engage and be kind and everybody was ignoring me. I was also had my head down, not making contact, not smiling, not saying hello, all of those kind of things. So I was like, I need to change my attitude, and I'm going to make a point of looking people in the eyes and trying to greet them and things as I'm walking that I pass. And so I did that this second time, and I think everybody but maybe like one who was like busy doing something, whatever, which totally understandable. But pretty much everyone like made eye contact, smiled, said hello, how's your day going? Like those kind of just little niceties of conversation. And it just made me feel so much better. And it's like, okay, well, I was being so bitter and negative about this, but like I wasn't doing anything to do any better. And then when I did, it made me feel good to make connection with people, especially as someone who works by myself, works from home, isn't around like interacting with people very often. It just made me feel good to have those little connections with people. And yeah, so I was also participating in being antisocial. And then when I took the time, which really wasn't time at all, but made the focus and the point to like say hello to people, that they also participated. So that was nice and just like a good reminder for me. And like developing community, even if it's not people I'm ever going to see again, just socializing with fellow humans and being kind. So that's one element of our lifestyles that we've lost, is like the socialization. And then another thing was our activity levels. So what they had recommended was considered like their baseline of whether or not someone was active was 150 minutes a week was the minimum, I believe, is what they were like lining everything up to. And 150 minutes a week, when you divide that out, is just 30 minutes a day for 5 days. So whether you think of your activity level on a Monday through Friday, or if it's easier for you to move on Tuesday, I don't know how I said that. If it's easier for you to move on like Saturdays and Sundays and you have more energy on the weekends, and you devote maybe like 45 minutes a day each and then spread less time out throughout the week, however you divide that up, it's just 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, which really isn't that much. But the fact that I think it was like 50% or 55% of Americans are not even moving that much on average. So yeah, it's very low. Our activity levels are very low, which means our inactivity is very high, which increases our chances for inflammation, remember, which is what we're talking about today. and it affects our inflammation because movement helps our cardiovascular system. It moves our lymphatic system around, our ability to cycle quote unquote toxins that people talk about with our lymphatic system and draining and how well the fluids are moving. Same with your blood and your heart rate and getting your heart rate increased or just pumping in general more than what it takes to like sit on the couch or sit at your desk. All of those kind of factors play into what your inflammatory levels are going to be. So, yeah, just 150 minutes a week, I would say. Just if you're not getting that, is a good place to start. So, 30 minutes 3 times, 30 minutes 5 times. And I'm trying to think what the 7 days a week is. That like 20 minutes, 25 minutes a day if you spread it across 7 days? I don't know. I don't have a calculator right now, but it's something roughly like that. The other thing was your circadian rhythm, which I've talked about, of course, as well before, and how important it is and how much healthier or lower in inflammation that people had when they regularly had a cycle, a circadian rhythm that was healthy and normal, but that they had a cycle that followed with the sunshine, or like being awake when the sun is up and sleeping when the sun is down. So if you are someone who is a shift worker and you work nights, or your shift is just later in the day where you don't get home then until the middle of the night, those kind of things, how that already puts you at a predisposition for an increased level of inflammation in your body because of the stress that is created by your cortisol from your circadian rhythm being different than like following the direct patterns of the sun. Because we've talked about the importance of like getting that early morning sunlight exposure and how that triggers a healthy release of cortisol that your body needs to then set itself up for the rest of the day. And so you get that cortisol release, the healthy cortisol release, best when you see the early morning sun. Something to do with the levels of the sun hitting your corneas at the right like angle so that you get that bright light exposure. So how important it is to go outside in the morning. So, and then that your energy levels then cycle through and your stress levels cycle through based on those, that sun exposure. Sorry, I assume you can hear the dogs barking in the background, and it's really distracting me now. And I'm really sorry if you can, and if you can't hear it, I'm glad, and I'm sorry that I brought it up. Okay, so yeah, sunshine is very important. Sunshine is also important because that is a really great way for our bodies to make vitamin D, which is being deficient in vitamin D is also an indicator of increased inflammation, as well as being a higher chance for depression and other things as well. So it's important to have sunshine for our vitamin D as well. And then on the opposite side of the sunshine, also talking about like blue light or artificial light exposure and how that kind of lighting has affected our circadian rhythms, and how, because it allows us to stay up later and to be awake in the night if we need to be, and how it influences our ability for our body to understand rest. So being in a dark room and dimmed lighting, like an hour or more like before you are ready to go to bed, how that is important for your signaling rest to your body as well, and getting a good amount of sleep. Because like we talked about, one cause of not having enough sleep, or one cause of inflammation, is also having sleep disturbances. So all of that is associated with the circadian rhythm. So that was the social, the activity levels, your circadian rhythm, how all these things play into lifestyle. There's another lifestyle factor that is, I think, is probably one of the hardest ones, and that's your air exposure to air pollutants and environmental exposures, or just the environment that you're in. But some things that I know it can be a lot harder to control because it's not easy to move. It's not easy to like live in a new environment if you're near your job or near your family, near support, if it's financially a good decision for you, all of those kind of factors. But some things that you can do to have a better opportunity and to make your environment better, that I talked about also on the episode about endocrine disruptors with the scientists. So Something you can do to improve that is to keep your home living environment as clean as you can. So, if the outdoor air is fresh air and it's not a lot of air pollutants, to open those doors and let the air in. Open your doors and windows to let fresh air circulate regularly. That can be beneficial. Also, keeping your home space as clean as possible, keeping dust and um, hair and dander and all of those things that accumulate naturally in homes, dirt from the outside, on your shoes or clothes or whatever, keeping that as clean as possible with vacuuming and dusting and wiping down surfaces. Um, that can be really beneficial. And then on the pricier side is having a air purifier in your house, whether it's just if you can just afford like one small one that's good for like a bedroom, or you only want to put money towards that, it would be good to have one in your bedroom, or just any room that you feel that you live the most or spend the most time in. So I feel like for a lot of people, that is their bedroom, especially if they work and they leave the house. Just to have a small air purifier can also be beneficial for reducing environmental exposure and air pollutants. But I know that that one is harder for people, but those are just a few things that you could try to help improve those things. So, the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the inflammatory diet. So, foods that might be in your diet regularly that, if you cut back on them, would reduce your inflammation, because these foods could increase inflammation if you're consuming them too much or consistently on a daily basis. So, the list that they gave, which I feel like does encompass pretty much what I would say, was refined grains, alcohol, ultra processed foods, and emulsifiers. And so, um, refined grains is talking about just like anytime you are going to strip a grain of its fiber and its vitamin and mineral content. And then oftentimes they do this where they end up fortifying the food. And so they put the vitamins and minerals back into the food, but it's not the same as getting it naturally from the food already having it. So that happens with some cereals, because cereal is a grain, or it comes from a multitude of grains. There's farro, which is definitely not a common one that is used in cereal. So I don't know why I said it first, but wheat, corn, barley, all of these things sometimes are ultra refined and they lose their nutrients that are naturally existing. And then alcohol, obviously we know, is beer, wine, liquor, those sort of things. If you are consuming large quantities of alcohol, it can increase the inflammation in your body. So I would personally try to reduce it. I know for myself, I haven't been drinking alcohol by choice since like October, when my last surgery happened. Before that, I didn't drink that often, just like socially, but I've had a lot of fun like trying out different mocktails or just like fun drinks at home that are different, that still give you that same feeling of like having an alcoholic beverage, because it's like fun and it's not water or soda, but also it doesn't have alcohol in it, which I think is beneficial. Ultra processed foods would be foods that have been highly manipulated. So some processing is not a big deal. Like you can buy foods at the store out of your convenience, like fruit that's already chopped up and prepared for you, or like meal kits where the food has just been kind of like packaged and prepared for you to cook it. And even some packaged foods like cereal or oatmeal packs and those kind of things that have been processed, like in moderation, everything is fine. Um, but some foods that are highly processed and highly manipulated, like if you think about like white bread, all of the ingredients and the fact that it's like an ultra refined grain as well, where they just completely strip the wheat to make the bread. They said potentially potato chips. I think more of like veggie straws and like Pringles, those kind of chips where they completely grind up the chip product and make it into a mash and then into a shape, if that makes sense. Like if you're eating like a sliced potato that's been fried and salted and that's all the ingredients, like it's not the best option because it's still a fried food and there is oil and it's like somewhat inflammatory, but then like I don't know. Anyways, there's that. Also, like soda is ultra processed because it's just like corn syrup and flavoring and all of that. just those kind of foods are going to affect your body a lot more as far as the inflammation goes as well. I think what they said was like, I know one of the words they used was like if it's been extruded, so like hot dogs, chicken nuggets, those kind of things, um, that those are more likely to cause inflammation in your body. And then they said especially foods also that are ultra processed and contain emulsifiers. So you're going to find a lot of emulsifiers in a variety of food products. I know I see it a lot on like ice creams, some dairy products, and definitely like dairy alternatives are going to have a lot of emulsifiers because they need the gums and things like that to stabilize the product because it's not a natural product the way that cow's milk is. And so they add like carrageenan gum, or I can't think of any other of the gums, but it'll say it on the package if you read the label. And they use them to fill and like create textures and stabilization. It's also on other packaged foods. So just to be aware of that, because those foods in particular, or those ingredients, eating them in large quantities especially, you're going to find an association between that and like some gut health problems affecting your microbiome, the bacteria that is lining your gut that is supposed to be good bacteria for you, to help you digest and live basically. It's going to have an effect on that as well. So, also, though, I should add that some dairy products also, like some just regular old milk, does have the gums and things as well. Like I said, you just have to check the ingredients. I know, like, I've talked about how I drink the Fairlife protein drinks, and one thing I don't like about them, like, if I had to pick only one, or if I had to pick, there's only one thing I don't like about it is that it does use like gums and stabilizers. And I think it's because they ultra filter the milk. So then they need something to like stabilize it because it's just got a bunch of protein in it now. So you'll find it in all sorts of different products and you can just read the label. But I wouldn't make that like your top priority if you're going to pick something to reduce. I would kind of look at the other things first because they're much easier and have like swaps that are easier to make in life as well. So these types of foods are going to be associated with low-grade leaky gut or like immune system changes, and especially if you are consuming them regularly. So a lot of times people think that dietary inflammation or dietary health is only associated like with weight or weight type disease. I guess like type 2 diabetes would be included in that. And it is true that those things go hand in hand, that your diet does affect those things directly, affects the amount of like visceral fat that you have and all of those sort of things. But it also can affect other systems in your body as well, but also understanding that your body is a whole system. So when you affect your blood sugar and you have like metabolic problems or have too much visceral fat from obesity, it influences the rest of your body as well, because insulin and your blood sugar is hormone associated. It's part of your endocrine system. And visceral fat also is part of the endocrine system. It's also part of the immune system. It can also influence your lymphatic system because it can release estrogen. Like fat cells can put off estrogen. So it all works together and it's all influenced by everything. So while yes, you're affecting yourself with your weight and your blood sugar, you're also affecting your entire system. Another reason inflammatory foods and this kind of diet can influence your overall health is because of your digestive system and how much influence that has. So if you're regularly constipated or struggle with having bowel movements regularly, then that also influences your overall health because you're not able to get rid of like any kind of waste that your body is trying to release. And so then more things end up back in your system and recirculating as well as just like being in your digestive tract for longer. So all of these things play off of each other. And then, so yeah, that's kind of like the downside of diet. But if you want to hear about an anti-inflammatory diet that can actually help your system to reduce the inflammation, that's what we are going to talk about next. So anti-inflammatory diet, that is going to be a diet rich in fruits, in vegetables, in fiber, and pre and probiotics, and healthy oils and fats, which would make your diet high in omega-3s. especially when you're comparing the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. You want your omega-3s to be higher than the omega-6s that are in your system. And currently in like a standard American diet, most people significantly have way more omega-6 fatty acids than omega-3s. And while our body still does need some like small amounts of omega-6 fatty acids, when that you have too many of them, they are very inflammatory for your system. And omega-3s are actually anti-inflammatory and reduce inflammation in your system. So those kind of foods that are going to be high in omega-3 fatty acids are going to come from fish, like salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines. I think it's like cold water fatty fish is usually what I say, because that's where you're going to find your omega-3 sources. And then also things like olive oil, nuts and seeds, flaxseed, chia seeds. Although kind of controversial, because I know I was taught in school, like with flax seeds specifically, because they are so small, if you try to eat them in their whole form, your teeth aren't capable to actually grind them up to release the oil that's in them into your system. And so like they're still beneficial because then it's like of the fiber benefit, but you're not necessarily getting the omega-3 benefit from them. So take that as you will. And then if you get ground flax seeds, there's like a problem with the stabilization of the omega-3 fatty acids. So I don't know if it would be best then if you like buy whole flax seeds and then grind them yourself upon like consumption, like right before you're going to eat them. But anyways, that's like kind of a lot of work. So I don't really even know. I just remember that being something we talked about in school. And then almonds, walnuts, all of those kind of things, sunflower seeds, pine nuts, pumpkin seeds, all of these things are great for you with healthy fats. Prebiotics are just one form of fiber in your systems, or fiber in your food, that are just called prebiotics because they also act as food for the healthy bacteria that are in your gut or your microbiome. And so those foods are going to be, or some really good examples of prebiotics are like oats, bananas, garlic, anything in the garlic or onion family, like garlic, onions, green onions, scallions, those sort of things. Leeks are all good sources of prebiotic fiber. Apples, all of that. And then probiotics, which are the good bacteria. So pre feeds it or is like a precursor, and then like pro, good biotics, meaning the bacteria living in your system. So probiotics are going to come from fermented foods naturally. So sauerkraut and like miso and natto and yogurt are all going to be good sources of probiotics. And kimchi was the other one I was trying to think of. With like the kimchi and the sauerkraut, though, you have to make sure that you're getting the raw form of them in order to actually be getting the probiotics, because if they are pasteurized, it heats them up to the point where it's killing off the good bacteria. So be wary of those kind of things and don't consume them raw if you're someone who has like an immune disorder, or like if you're more at risk for illness, I guess, like young children, pregnant women, old elderly. Consult your doctors. I mean, you can consult your doctors for sure either way, but just be especially wary in those cases. And of course, like pay attention to the food and whether or not it's spoiling, proper refrigeration, all of that is especially important with the raw foods. So those are just places that you can get probiotics though. And then fiber is kind of, we already talked about it with the prebiotics, but like any fruits or vegetables are going to be rich in fiber. Beans are a really great source of fiber, legumes, lentils, and whole grains. So before we talked about the problem with excessively refined grains and grains that are stripped of their fiber and nutrients, but for anti-inflammatory properties and increased fiber, you can have whole wheat, whole grain oats, popcorn is a whole grain. Those sort of things are going to have fiber in them and be okay. And then fruits and vegetables, of course. Fruits and vegetables are really great for us, and they are really important in our diet every single day, having a good quantity of them. Any fruit or vegetable you want, and they are going to have, lots of vitamins and minerals crossover. I always encourage people to just eat the rainbow of variety as often as you can, because that's going to get you the variety of vitamins and minerals. Interestingly enough, a lot of the phytonutrients or the nutrients in the plants correlate with the color of the fruit or vegetable. So you're going to find specific vitamins and minerals across the board for like foods in the same color category. So just trying to get a variety of colors. And it doesn't have to be like every single day you eat every single color of the rainbow. But I always encourage people to look at like their intake across a 1 week time span and what that typically looks like. So when you're at the grocery trying to put a variety of fruits and vegetables into your cart for the week and then eating them, at a variety of times. And those are going to be beneficial for the water content, for the vitamins, for the minerals that a lot of our bodies are depleted in, and for the fiber, of course, as well. So all of those foods are going to be found as anti-inflammatory. And previously we talked about the inflammatory. And then before that, we talked about like lifestyle changes that could be made, and ones that are positive and ones that might be increasing your inflammation or like quote unquote negative. So, yeah, like I said, I'm going to link this below. Please feel free to share this with anyone who you think might benefit from hearing the information or find it interesting or beneficial for their lives as well. Cutting back on inflammation, it can help. I think that this kind of information, more so than some of my other podcasts, are definitely open for any topic or anybody, not just women and not just nutrition and for the menstrual cycle. But yeah, it's beneficial for everyone to know this because it affects everyone. So, yeah, that's just kind of the general conversation. I will probably, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe make another episode that's like inflammation geared towards women specifically, um, women's menstrual cycles and hormone health and how inflammation is playing a role in those things. But this is kind of like ways, I just wanted to talk about things in people's lives that are causing inflammation and things that they could do to reduce that inflammation exposure. So I hope that's what you got out of the episode. Like I said, if you share this episode, I'm so grateful that you find it worthy of sharing and appreciate that always. It helps me out a lot, as well as leaving a rating and or review on the episode also helps me. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. I hope that this has helped you to understand inflammation in your lifestyle and how it's influenced by your lifestyle and your diet. And I also hope that this helps you to make better bites. Have a great week.